Welcome to Biz Dev Live. This is their Biz D with the C. I am so excited to bring you Ron Friedman today. Have you had tax trouble? Are you challenged with talking to the IRS? Is it a weight that bears down on you? Well, we're going to get into some of the solutions, some of the things that you can do to sort of work and resolve those issues. We'll get into a little bit of Ron Friedman's background, all that and more right after the BizDev theme. We'll be right back with you.
BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.
Ron Friedman helps you, right, get out of tax trouble. Ron Friedman, CPA CTRS, is your first responder to troubled taxpayers. We help individuals, he helps individuals and businesses fix the income tax problems they create by taking on the IRS and making sure you don't pay a penny more than you have to in taxes. Ron's main area of focus in tax preparation, planning, and resolution by assisting taxpayers with various IRS collection tools such as collection notices, bank levies, wage garnishments, asset liens and seizures. Other services include unfiled tax returns, offers and compromise, installment agreements, audit representation, and payroll tax issues. Ron has hosted his own radio show, Tax Tips with Ron Friedman, discussing current events in tax planning and tax resolution. Ron has presented to various trade and professional groups on topical tax issues, and Ron is licensed CPA in the state of New York and a certified tax resolution specialist accredited by the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers. He's also a member in good standing in the American Institute of CPAs and New York Society of CPAs. Ron, thanks so much for being on with me today.
Cameron, it's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to our time together.
I want to kind of let people know who you are, what you do. So if you can sort of kind of tell us what present day you're doing for clients. I know I've just kind of expanded a little bit on that, but if you can talk about maybe some very specific issues that you're dealing with and how people can get in touch with you, and then we'll get into a little bit of your background.
Sure, absolutely. Typically, the tax problem starts when a taxpayer sees a return that he has to file and there's a large amount due and says, you know what, I'm not going to file it. I don't have the money right now. I'll get to it later. And the next year rolls around and the same thing happens and it becomes a snowball up until about maybe 2 or 3 years later, the IRS catches on, starts sending nasty grams or collection notices. And now the taxpayer is like, uh-oh, what do I do now? So that's where I come in. I do a thorough analysis of the taxpayer situation. I analyze what is owed, how much is owed, how long they have to pay it, because that's a very important part of the analysis, and what can be done to solve the situation.
That's awesome. And tell me, what are some of the results that you've been able to get for some of your customers in terms of, amounts and settled, just to sort of give an idea, because I'm sure folks will watch this and say, well, I owe $50,000. I know I came to you and, one of the challenges I had was, I was looking at 1 year and they were coming after me for a couple of different years, but 1 year was like 30,000. Another year was 40,000, another 50,000, something like that. So trying to get all that worked out, and then that being 4 and 5 years ago, right?
Well, the great thing about this is that not every taxpayer has the same solution as anyone else. So the way I got into this business was quite literally by accident. A current client had referred me to an elderly couple who the IRS had said that they owed, like $60,000 or $65,000. And when I got to their home to do an interview, I had realized that they had a stack of envelopes from the IRS that was unopened. So I went through them, and what wound up happening is all I had to do was file the outstanding returns. And once we knew how much was actually owed after the filed returns were filed, we were able to settle the debt for $1,500.
Yeah, I know that for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other folks, the amount of paperwork that the IRS sends at you, and then trying to read it and decipher it and understand what is an actual thing that you owe, what's an actual, like it's tough to figure out. So I know having somebody like you to be able to sort through that, certainly that's what it sounds like happened in that situation. Just being able to sort through it and understand it and deal with it was a big help. Talk to me about your background. Why did you get into doing this stuff? What, I am certainly one of those folks in high school, and I talk about this all the time. I had exhibitions due for high school. I did my literature one. I didn't want to touch the math or the science one, that kind of thing. What got you into this business? Why do you have a love at all for numbers and looking through these types of, what to me is like, speaking some crazy foreign language in terms of looking at these documents?
Well, the story I like to tell about being an accountant is, quite frankly, I knew I was going to be an accountant all the way back when I was a middle schooler. We had a project in sixth grade to produce a biography, a pictorial biography. And on the last page, I remember I could see the picture that I used there very clearly, that there were three things in life that I wanted to aspire to. I was going to be either a hockey player, a radio broadcaster, because at the time I was in love with both Warner Wolf and Len Berman, or I was going to be an accountant. And the reason why I picked accountant, because we had a family friend who I had a lot of respect for, and I liked the work that he did. And I always had an attraction to tax. I thought it was a much more practical solution rather than plain accounting and auditing. Accounting and auditing to me is fairly dry. It's fairly straightforward, but dealing with the IRS, actually, I like to joke with my colleagues that dealing with the IRS allows me to act like a lawyer without actually having to be one. So I get to take on the IRS. I get to make sure that I hold their feet to the fire, just like the IRS likes to hold taxpayers' feet to the fire in terms of paying their taxes. But I make sure that all the rules and regulations are followed to the letter, and make sure that my clients don't pay a penny more than they have to. That's
awesome. So you're talking about your education. Obviously, you have your own firm now. But I know that you have a background. So what was your education like, and how did you go from education to your first role at a company? And then, I want to kind of, pull that story through how you ended up eventually opening up your own.
Okay. When I was in undergraduate school, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And after I graduated Queens College, I went into the financial planning business. I was a representative for two major life insurance companies as a financial advisor. And in my travels, I got to speak to a lot of accountants, because accountants are a trusted advisor for clients. And oftentimes clients or potential clients would say, you know what, your proposal looks great. I need to talk to my accountant. And after speaking to a lot of accountants, I realized that this is something that I need to investigate. Ironically, I started out as an accounting major at Queens College, but turned to economics thinking that would give me a leg up as an entrepreneur. So I decided at that point to go back to school, get my MBA in accounting, and sat for the CPA exam, and passed on I'm not ashamed to say, I think it was the third try. Very few people pass it on the first try. So the third try I was okay with. And in order to get your CPA license, you have to commit to a 2-year time frame to be working under a CPA. So once I got my license, I stayed in public accounting for about 8 or 9 years and made a quality of life decision to go into private accounting. And the difference between public and private is that in public accounting, it's almost like a working for a law firm. You have a lot of different clients to serve. When you work in private, you have one client to work for, and you're working on their internal accounting. This was back in 2007, and it was right before the financial crisis. And since I was the last one hired, I was the first one to go, which left me as a 40-something accountant, not knowing what the hell to do. So I knew I had my license. I knew I had some smarts and some tax knowledge. And what wound up happening is that I went out on my own. And I was doing a lot of private accounting for clients. I started up a virtual CFO using the internet as a platform to help people do their accounting and file their taxes. And then came along my client who referred me to my first tax. The rest is history.
That's awesome. I think, a lot about, and I want to kind of put a pin in this, but just the idea of, so many people are in transition now. Obviously, that was a transitional moment for you, going from being employed with firm and then, all right, now how do I figure this out? But so many people, I think, are challenged with accounting. So I give a lot of thought about, opening up another business that is just this kind of small business accounting, the nuts and bolts education, helping people on the day-to-day. And I'm horrible with accounting, but I think that's specifically why I'm excited about potentially opening up a business like that, because I think so many people just need that financial help, understanding business models, understanding profit, understanding how to put your stuff, your ducks in a row, so to speak, so that you're ahead of the curve when it comes to filings and all that kind of stuff. I think it's such a needed piece of the game. So talk to us about owning your own, talking about all the, pieces of owning your own small business. You went from working in a large firm to owning your own thing. I wonder, about accountants' businesses, right? And I know that there are situations where it's, there's some folks that have a situation of like the cobbler's shoes, right? I can help other people, but, my business is struggling, or, I'm not, putting profit first in my business. So talk to us a little bit about how you've run your business, how you've made sure that you're not going crazy, that you serve the clients, get that customer satisfaction where you need it to be. You're a very responsive guy, so staying up on top of things and being responsive, those are all big things for a small business, especially that represents folks on the financial side. So talk to us a little bit about that.
I think the biggest takeaway for me that I can share with your audience is my level of responsiveness. From the moment that a prospect calls in for help, I have a system that basically it's a tickler system. When someone comes in and needs help, and for whatever reason they're not ready to engage at that point in time, I have a 7-point touch system where I keep up with that person and just check in with them and say, hey, I know it's a tough situation right now, but are you ready to move forward? Is it time now to resolve the matters that have been top of mind for you for so long? Because essentially what it comes down to, it's a stress relief. You're taking the load off the person and trying to help them through. You're being an agent of change for them. And in terms of tax resolution, you're their advocate. You're going to take on the IRS or New York State and find out the best resolution for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in running your own business, what are some of the challenges that you've run into on the organizational, finding clients? I know we've talked a little bit about just how do you get clients, the marketing aspects of being a business. You can be great at your job, but if people don't know where you are and how to find you and what number to dial and all that sort of stuff, it can be challenging. So how have you kind of dealt with some of those things? Obviously, participating in something like this where, we're getting the message out to another audience is one of those steps in the right direction for kind of a small business to market themselves. But what are some of the things that have worked for you in the past?
Well, personally, over the past couple of years, it's been a couple of years of a lot of change and growth. I moved offices. I bought a new home, and that had inherent challenges in terms of organization, getting my office set up, and putting all the pieces together to fit so I would know how to take on a new client, what to do when that new client comes in. So I have a variety of systems for client acquisition and customer service, for lack of a better term, to make sure that all of their needs are attended to in a scheduled way. I actually have a platform that I use. It's a project manager that I know where every single case is at any given point in time.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I think systems and processes for any small business are key. You can't do it all in your head. So getting it out of your head and getting your system, I know that's helped me big time with Toth Event Staffing over the last 9 years, and still trying to put systems and processes in place around financing is so big because it just takes a little bit for, like you said, things to snowball, putting things off in any kind of way. What are some of the most common and costly mistakes taxpayers make representing themselves, not getting somebody else involved in their disputes with the IRS?
Well, I call it the DIYers. I give them a lot of credit for having the fortitude to call up the IRS and think that they're going to get the right answer out of the IRS. What I have found is in speaking to telephone assistants with the IRS is that the information that's disseminated is not always right. And you have employees there that come from a variety of different backgrounds, a variety of different levels of training. There is a human capital crunch at the IRS where a lot of the tenured and experienced people are up for retirement, and there's a vacuum there that it can only be filled by Congress upgrading the funding of the IRS. So if you want to do it yourself, God bless you. You're going to need a lot of help, and when the time comes, I hope you call me. Because I'm experienced, I know how to take on the IRS. I've won with the IRS. I have a couple of stories that I can share with you a little later. If I can, I have a picture of the IRS, the maze, the different working areas of the IRS, and it looks worse than a subway map. Between processing and collections and audits and all the other various work groups in the IRS, it looks worse than the subway map.
Well, that's something that I can speak from personal experience when you're speaking to folks, whether you're talking about the state tax collection agencies or you're talking about the IRS specifically. It's very challenging. They are on, as you were saying, dated systems. Manpower certainly seems short. I compare it to walking into an old style bank where, I'm sitting at home. I got 2 monitors plus a laptop sitting in front of me. I got, the webcam. I have a couple of different cell phones for my business. You go into some of these places and they barely have an updated computer in front of them, and there's not a lot of stuff. It's still like they're combing through mountains of paperwork, and so it's no wonder that folks are going crazy and things go so slow, because all it takes is something to be misfiled or mislabeled, and suddenly it's impossible. And then the only way to submit something is by fax. And you're like, what? I have every piece of technology known to man in front of me, except for a fax machine. Like I don't have, so it's that kind of like, I thought fax machines were dead in the 80s, but apparently for the IRS, they're still alive and well, right?
Well, maybe fax paper, but no, interesting that you say that because, yeah, the IRS is one agency that could use a major upgrade, both in technology and in certain cases, human capital. But this is the hand that we're dealt with. It actually works in my favor because I know the rules. I know how to get people out of trouble, and it's just a matter of advocating for my client. Case in point, I have a client right now who came to the realization that he needed to resolve his tax debt because he wanted to buy a house. He has 4 special needs children. He's a mental health professional, and his wife is a nurse. She's a frontline nurse. She's been working with COVID patients since March. And when he told me that he wanted to buy the house and wanted to clear up his situation, I said, fine, let's get this done. And it seemed like a very simple case. Just call the IRS, get an installment agreement ready, and we're done. Then COVID hit. And what wound up happening is that he had some pre-existing issues that were in appeals. So that's a different part of the IRS. But the amount of effort that it took to get the paperwork from appeals to collections was mind-boggling. Because shutdowns, it was almost like moving Mount Sinai to get the paperwork from appeals to collections. So what wound up happening is that there's a special area of the IRS that's supposed to be independent. It's called the taxpayer advocate. And they're supposed to advocate for troubled taxpayers when people like me can't get any help. And even they couldn't solve the problem. So I had to pull out my last bullet, and what wound up happening is that I called the taxpayers congressperson. In this case, it was Nita Lowy. And within 3 days, I had a call from the taxpayer advocate, and I got a resolution. And I'm hoping by next week, the installment agreement will be ready and that the taxpayer can apply for his mortgage and move into his house.
That's awesome. I've corresponded with Nita Lowy's office, and I don't know, the power is hard sometimes. They're not always able to do things, but I'm glad to know that they were able to do something in your case. And it's been a testament to her. I know she's retiring, but she's always had a very responsive office. I really credit her with that. And that's something that's big, because you have somebody that's supposedly working for you on the public dime, and you want to know that they're in your corner and they're at least talking to you. And she's always been good that way. So it's great to hear a story like that. Mm-hmm. So what loopholes or secret strategies that what are some of these secret strategies that you want to talk about in terms of negotiating with the IRS?
Well, since every case is unique, each case presents its own strategies or ways to figure out how to solve the problem. And oftentimes I'm asked to literally think out of the box based on the situation. But what I can tell people is that if you have a tax problem right now, get to it right now, because you can leverage COVID to your advantage, whether it's an individual income tax problem or a business tax problem, payroll taxes that haven't been paid or corporate income taxes that haven't been paid. Now's the time to act, because once the IRS and hopefully the nation get back on track, it's going to be back to the old system. There are ways to get out of trouble during COVID.
It's good to know. I think, people that are dealing with those challenges, and it might be a lot because everybody's dealing with a lot of challenges. I was speaking to, I come from the events industry. Toth Event Staffing is an event related industry, live events particularly. I'm looking forward to 2022, which is a little bit challenging because 2022 is over a year away. So many people are dealing with these humongous challenges in the business, and nobody wants to deal with the taxes. But I think that message of, hey, if you do have a challenge, this is the time to work with it, because are you preparing your business for the future that's coming, right? Yes, there's going to be challenges. Yes, and I want to say this and not sound savage about it, but I mean, businesses always face challenges. This is just the latest one. We're going to survive. For those folks that are committed to surviving, how are you coming out of this better than you were before? And I know for Tilted Event Staffing, although it's very challenging, I know that we're going to come into 2022 with a better sense of how to do hiring better, utilizing Zoom and the technologies that I've been learning over the past months. We're going to have a better way to train folks. We have a better way to connect with customers through experimenting with online marketing and doing YouTube videos. I know that, I'm going to be in a better place than I was before business-wise. So, making sure that you're doing the things financially. If you apply for PPP like I did, making sure that you're getting the forgiveness, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. It's going to be really, really huge. Talk to me about some of I know you have some of these kind of case studies, and I'd love to get into some of these case studies with you, some of the things that you've dealt with specific clients. If you can talk to us about some of these specific challenges and stories that you can share.
Well, I mean, I just want to pick up on a point that you had mentioned before about as business owners, we are challenged with guiding our business through whatever weeds that present themselves. The thing about having an IRS problem is that they can shackle you, both figuratively and literally. If you owe enough and you don't pay attention to I like to call very warmingly, nasty grams, they'll shut you down. And I don't want anyone to have their life's work shut down because of a tax issue. So what I like to tell my clients is,
I'll just say, because I think it's important to say, ignoring it won't make it go away, even though we sometimes
right. So I used to tell my kids when they were younger, thankfully they like to eat their vegetables. So, but when they would, when I would try and introduce them to a new food, it's sort of like eating the frog. You want to get it out of the way so that you can move on to the chocolate. So, get rid of the most, the thing that you want to do least, get that done first so you can move on.
Yeah, no, I agree. And whenever you can, get it off your plate, get it into somebody else's hands. I think the biggest challenge for me specifically on, because, I hire folks like yourself, I have other financial folks, is just having that trust and that ability to let go, getting somebody that's in the office doing the day-to-day so that that's what I'm working on now, is trying to get somebody in the office that can just, I can understand, hey, this is the cost, but they're going to be focused on, and they're going to make sure that this is the stuff that's done every day. If it's something that I'm holding the keys on, they're going to hit me on the head over and over and over again until I let go of it. So that it is truly off my plate, and I have the freedom to be creative and be awesome at the things that I'm really good at, and not held up by these things that I'm not good at.
Yeah, and the thing for me is that I adopted a business practice that, because this is such a key element of someone's background. God, I've got a tax problem. What do I do with it? I've had clients who haven't even told their wives that they have a tax problem. So imagine the shame that people can feel, when trying to resolve their own taxes. And I speak to that. And what I do with my clients is that, first of all, we have to have a collaborative relationship, because I can't help you if you don't give me the information that I need. And that it's that whole know, like, and trust deal. So I don't ever want to be surprised by the IRS to say, well, your client did this, and the client never mentioned it to me. So, generating that trust with that client can only be achieved with transparency. And what I tell clients when they first engage me is that I have an engagement letter, and I go over the engagement letter and say, in this phase of the engagement, you're going to the deliverables are X, Y, and Z. All right. And then in the next phase, when we resolve their tax problem, the deliverables are going to be D, E, and F. And I continue with that touch point system because, things at the IRS don't take days. They don't take weeks. Sometimes they can take months and years. And I make sure that my clients know exactly where their case is at any given point in time on a timely basis, whether it's monthly or bi-monthly, they know.
What would you say? Because the overstarking thing, and this is sort of always what is weighing on me. What is the biggest way, aside from obviously not ignoring nasty grams and things like that, but what is the best way? Because I think, when you talked about when you opened up and said, well, you filed taxes and now you owe a bill and you don't have enough money to pay. And so you put it off and now you're, on year 2. What are ways folks can really avoid that? As a business, how can you avoid getting surprised with these large tax bills?
Okay, so it's always better to file than not file, and in a real way. So if you don't file, the penalties can be upwards of about 5%. If you file and don't pay, the penalties drop to about 0.5%. So you've saved 4.5% just by filing, right? Because all the IRS wants is 2 things. They want compliance and payment if you owe them.
And so, again, going back to this idea, because I get that, you need to file, you need to process the paperwork, stay on top of that. But how can you stay ahead of it and not be surprised? What are the calculations, or what is the relationship that you need to have with your bookkeeping and accounting so that you're not surprised, so that you're planning that? I think, in talking about, profiting, off of your company, and everybody, I think this conversation is always a funny one. All right, my K1 says, for anybody that has a C corp or S corp or LLC, right? You're filing this these returns for the company, and then there's a certain amount of money that turns over to the individual under your social as profit. Now you're going through these forms, and then these forms will sometimes say, well, you made $30,000, and you're sitting there looking at your bank account. Okay, if I made $30,000, where's the money, right? So I think that's where especially small business owners can be very surprised because they're showing a profit for the IRS, but they're not seeing the profit and actual cash money, and you're owed money on this, you owe money on this profit. And I think one of the things that I'm speaking to and trying to peel out of you, and one of the things that I'm working to do better is like, quarterly estimating and, making sure that I'm depositing, and nobody wants to say, well, I'm giving money to the IRS that I don't already owe. But in my mind and having experience with it, listen, let me get the money. Let me design my business so that I understand what percentage of what should just go into an account for taxes that just doesn't get touched, so that at the end of the year, writing that check, or quarterly writing that check, is not a big deal, and I'm not surprised by anything. And I understand, the profit when I truly report profit to myself. Forget about what it says on a tax form, but profit to myself. I understand that I've made this much money is saved for taxes, and that expense that I know inevitably is coming up, I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I know that it's going to be there.
So for me, as a practitioner, I think education is key. I just had this conversation literally yesterday with a client who freaked out because she'd received some planning documents that I had given to her, and she took a look at the numbers, and she almost had a coronary. She was crying to me over the phone. I don't understand this. So I just had to stop her in her tracks and say, okay, this is what we did originally. Okay. And this was the plan that we had. This was back in April. And then COVID hit, and then we didn't file until July. And then we had a discussion about what 2020 was going to look like. And that was a conversation in July rather than April. So I had to explain to her the things that we had taken into account that had changed that led to this new document that she was freaking out about. So it's education, it's planning. If clients present themselves as individuals that are coachable and that are open to understand what the next step is, even though it's a body of knowledge that they're not really open to or care about, I understand. I have a lot of respect for business owners. They're out there, laying it all on the line, trying to, generate business. And that's the position I want to put myself in. I want to be able to take care of the back end, and they can make the money.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in that conversation, for me, like, and I am trying to be the business owner that is, all right, we're going to file in April. We're not going to wait to July, right? But I always somehow, some way find a way to put it off or wait on something. So what are some things that people can put into place? What are some strategies that you've seen small businesses use to effectively stay ahead of the tax challenge?
Hire the right people, plain and simple. Like I just said, business owners should be focused on running their business and not the business running them. So if you hire the right people to do the bookkeeping, or to hire an outside accountant to do, to come in either monthly or quarterly, or as you can't do a Google search without finding, one or two virtual CFOs that will, do the work offsite and collaborate with you in terms of knowing where your cash is, knowing what your profit is. And you had touched on that before in terms of, the K1. Just because you have money in the bank doesn't mean you're profitable. And just because you're profitable doesn't mean you have money in the bank. So that's the education that I like to impart on people, to let them know that profit is one thing. Profit is just the excess of income over expenses. It has nothing to do with cash, right? Because you have credit cards and other lines of credit that where the cash goes, that doesn't affect profit.
Right.
So,
well, I think I really appreciate that. So, delegating, making sure you're doing what you're good at, and you got other people doing what they're good at. I think in hiring folks, like you said, CFOs, virtual CFOs, somebody that's wanting to come in and play with your finances, those people abound. I think the challenge for small business owners like myself is, having that trust, bringing somebody in. One of the big conversations that we've been having, whether it's in Master Networks or someplace else, the idea that you're bringing somebody in that is a cultural fit. I've seen in small business organizations where they brought the wrong person in for probably the wrong reasons, and they were doing things with the money that just didn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So I think we've all heard of a horror story. All right, I gave somebody access to the accounts. They're managing this for me, and suddenly money disappears. So everybody's afraid of those kinds of horror stories. So I think balancing out like what we need with how to do it is sort of how folks sort of need to navigate that, right? So what are the things that you would recommend if they were interviewing somebody for that bookkeeping role or that accounting role for their company? What would you be looking at in order to make sure that this was a well-qualified, and aside from a well-qualified person that's not going to steal your money, one, right? Two, how do you make sure they're a good fit for your business?
Well, it's difficult for me to speak to the hiring process in general. because most business owners don't have the level of accounting knowledge that I might. So I would not be averse to hiring someone who has no accounting knowledge and train them. Okay. As long as they have a good attitude, and that they're willing to learn.
It's funny. I'm going to stop you there just for a second, because it's funny that you say that, because I have that conversation so often in the hospitality realm when people are asking me for advice in hiring. I said, listen, it's a lot easier to teach technical skills than attitude, right? If you find somebody that has the right attitude, that has the right can-do spirit and cultural fit for your organization, they want to learn, they want to be a part of it. It's a lot easier to train the technical skills into that person than finding somebody that the technical skills that has the right attitude. That can be very difficult sometimes.
Right. So in terms of other business owners who are tax and accounting challenged, it would certainly be within the business owner's right to call in a third party, a trusted source, to say, I'm considering hiring this person. Can you just take 5 minutes and talk to them about technical stuff? Even the outside accountant. I've seen that happen many a times, where a bookkeeper is up for consideration, and they have the outside accountant talk to them. There are plenty of evaluation tools out there to test applicants' accounting knowledge. You could always check into their background.
Yeah, I've definitely done all that. And I think what you were speaking to before, that idea of, finding that good fit, for personality and culture fit, the can-do attitude. I think the simpler thing, which is more complicated, but it's simple if you do it, right? So my experience, and I don't know if you can sort of where you fall in line with agreement with it, but if you've read E-Myth by Michael Gruber, and this is something that I didn't do from the start of my business and I realized I should have been doing, is document my processes, right? So I was doing accounting from day one for the business. And I was proud of my system in the beginning because I was doing everything on Excel. Now, was I tracking things the way an accountant would like me to track things? Absolutely not. But I knew what my expenses were, and I knew what my income was, and I knew how much money I had in the bank at the end of the day. Now, was I accounting for everything I needed to account for and all that kind of stuff? Absolutely not. But it was pretty clear, and I was doing the process. And as I learned, right, now I go to the accountant, I have that meeting. So years later, I'm into this. And so I'm hiring a bookkeeper. And instead of going to my one spot where I've kept all my notes on my processes for accounting, I went to Google and looked for a job ad for a bookkeeper. Now, that's not necessarily bad, but the thing is, I ignored all of my experience, took this ad from Google that I just searched up. Oh, that looks good. They got to have this, whatever. And I put that out, and that was my job ad for the position and the role. And I'm into the middle of interviewing candidates, with this job ad. And I realized after speaking to somebody, I'm on the phone with somebody and they're a QuickBooks Pro. And I'm like, that's what I use to do my finances every day. That's what I need. And so the light bulb goes off. And the reason the light bulb was going off mid-interview process, right? Mid, way through interviewing stuff, is because I didn't honor the fact that I kind of know some of the things about my business, and I should have used that knowledge first in my hiring process. So I think a lot of people skip over their own experience, their own knowledge, and take it for granted. I certainly did. And I sort of got a little bit of that from what you were talking about, because, in terms of like, all right, I can, call accountant over here to interview. Oh, I hear you're great at accounting, check out this guy. But you probably know more about your business than you think. So having a little bit of faith there, and then maybe calling some outside counsel once you have that list of things. Hey, I'm looking for somebody that these things are, is there anything I'm missing, right? Is there any note or detail that's really not on my list that should be there? I would say more often than not, if you're thorough in doing that list, the accountant's probably going to say, hey, make sure he knows how to do X, and then you're good, right? There might be something missing in there, but probably not a lot.
Yeah, I think that any business owner who hasn't hired or is in the process of hiring either a third or fourth or fifth candidate for any position is to sit down with yourself and say, what are my needs? What do I need this person to do within the context of my organization? What do they need to produce for me to say, okay, this person is successful, not only in terms of their work product, but also their attitude and how they relate to other people in the organization. And that's only a starting point. So when you get to that starting point, you've created an avatar of who you want to hire. And the rest is just finding that person. That's challenging in and of itself, but at least you're not working from behind the eight ball to say, okay, I think I found the right person. He hits some of the dots that are in my head right now. I haven't written them down, but it certainly, you should always, they always have to be technically competent. Absolutely, without question. You might want to employ a third party, let's say like the Robert Half, an employment agency. A try before you buy.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it depending on your budget. And I think some of those ways are great. Going with an agency, calling up your firms. Maybe they have somebody that, they have that they can send over to kind of walk you through what the process should be. I love a lot of those things and looking at different ways to look at how you're hiring. People are doing things where they're hiring folks from the Philippines and virtual assistants now, and that's becoming such a big and popular thing. So just looking at all of the different options that are available and what the best solution for you is so big. Talk to me about the challenge, right? So, I mean, we've spent a little bit of time talking about how you don't end up in trouble, and obviously brought up, the putting things off. Something happens, you're getting these nasty grams. What is, I obviously know you're going to say, give you a call, but what is the first thing that somebody should do when they're getting that first notice, or they've woken up and they've opened up that letter that they've been avoiding opening up after a while, and it's got those big bold letters on it, act now, wage garnishment, bank levy, whatever the mean, nasty thing that is either being threatened or is actually happening.
You're absolutely right. You don't necessarily have to call me, although I'd like you to, but that's a different story. What I like to tell people who come to me and say, look, I got this nasty gram, what do I do? Face it, fix it sooner, not later. That's my advice.
That's awesome. All right. So tell us, Ron, how can people get in touch with you? Who are you trying to connect with? And then how can folks try to get in touch with you? And I'm just, before you jump into this, I know I've posted your LinkedIn and your website down below on YouTube. So you can go down there and see that in the about information underneath this YouTube video. And if you're on Facebook, it's over there off to the side. You can just hit the read more and you'll find Ron's LinkedIn and website there. But how can people get in touch with you, Ron? And who are the people that you're looking to be in touch with?
Well, as we said before, having a tax problem is not something that you go into a meeting and say, hey, I got a tax problem. Typically, it's the trusted advisors, other bankruptcy attorneys, other attorneys, real estate agents, because people who are in trouble that may have a lien on their house can't sell the house if they're looking to downsize until they take care of their income tax problem. Mortgage brokers, other accountants who don't specialize in tax problem resolution. Those are just some of the people that I like to network with. But 90% of this industry is in the marketing and getting the word out. So there is some mass marketing involved in terms of reaching out to people on social media or lead letters. But in terms of networking with other people, the attorneys are a good centers of influence. Real estate salespeople, mortgage brokers, other accountants who don't specialize in this area, bookkeepers, enrolled agents, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Ron, what kind of things interest you before we go, and before I give you the last word? What kind of hobbies you have? What are things that you enjoy when you're not working?
Well, I'm so glad that my community center finally opened up their gym after 6 months. I'm not going to tell you how much more work I have to do, but I'm a gym rat. I also enjoy, watching my New York Giants, even though they're terrible this year. I like watching sports in general. I read. I like to read books that broaden my knowledge of not so much taxes, but marketing. I actually like reading marketing books because
what's your favorite marketing book that you've read lately?
I'm actually in the middle of this book right here, Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. And he has, even though it was published about 20 years ago, he has some really great insights into the sales process and what it takes to close a deal.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to let you have the last word and say goodbye to everybody. Thanks so much for doing this with me, Ron. I think we gave some folks some good advice how to stay out of trouble, and hopefully if they're in trouble, they're going to give you a call and get their situation resolved with the IRS, get things resolved way down from maybe some of the scary numbers that they're throwing at you. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to do this. I know people are calling you. I'll let you say goodbye to everybody, and just bear with me for 1 sec. All right, go ahead. Say bye to everybody.
Cameron, it was a pleasure talking with you today and sharing some of the information with your viewers. It's all up to you. If you have a tax problem, to reach out. And I'm also open to networking opportunities. If you think that we have if you want to learn more about me and my background, please feel free to reach out. I'm accessible. And again, thank you for your time, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Ron.
BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T.